Welcome in, Big Blue Nation, to a very special episode of the Cats Talk podcast. I'm your host, Cameron Johnston, joined by my co-host, Jacob Boyers. Jake, not necessarily breaking news anymore. It's obviously Monday night, 9:20. So breaking news for our latter segment, but Mark Stoops out as the Kentucky head coach after 13 seasons. Kentucky's all-time winningest head coach has been shown the door. And I don't even know if I want to bury the lead. We've obviously already hired our next head coach, Oregon offensive coordinator, Will Stein, who, Jake, I know you and I have been talking even before the coaching search began. This was a guy who was high on both of our lists of someone who we'd like to bring in. So let's just kind of we've been talking about this pre-podcast of like where to start with all this. We're really still not even sure where all to start. Let's go ahead and talk about Mark Stoops, his departure, and like things that kind of led up to that, where we started to see the downfall of what happened with what was the winningest coach in program history.
Yeah, a wild, I guess 48 hours going back to Saturday here. But, it's funny, Cam, because you talked yesterday, I saw in your little video you put out, you said you're excited for us to cover our first coaching search here at Cats Talk. And within 24 hours, it's over and we got our guy. But, man, I could not be more thrilled. I'll get into Stoops here in a second, but just in general, I did not foresee this playing out this way. I thought for sure we would get a Mitch Barnhart and Mark Stoops video together like we did with Cal, saying that, we're going to go back to work for one more year. And I was fully prepared to just be really disappointed with UK football and feel very groggy about the future. And then now, talk about a full 180. I told you before we hopped on, can it be September of 2026 yet? Because I'm ready to go. I can't wait, and I think we hit a home run of a hire, and just a crazy 24 hours. But I'm glad we're here, and we got the guy I think really outside of maybe Summerall was probably everybody's number one choice. So let's go.
Yeah, and for loyal Cats Talk podcast listeners, to hear Jacob say he's ready to go and fired up for the next Kentucky football game, I think tells you everything that you need to know. And I'm right there with you. I mean, the season just ended. Like, we didn't even mention the tail kicking that we got from Louisville. But I genuinely think going into both of these last 2 weeks, his job was completely safe. You had gotten him called back to 5-5. You had a chance to be bowl eligible, just win one of those two games. But instead you get blown out to Vanderbilt, who, let's give Vandy their credit. They've got a Heisman candidate quarterback. Clark Lee's doing terrific things down there in Nashville, and they are humming on all cylinders. So at least that one you can kind of excuse a little bit. Yep. But then you come out next Saturday against your bitter rival, a team who's down to their walk-on freshman running back, a quarterback in which had a weightlifting accident early in the week, missing their top two receivers, a team that's literally just throwing out a scout team. And you get ran off the field, 41-0, in which a game you were never competitive in, never showed any signs of life. I mean, I think that's where it all ended. Obviously that's where it all ended. But I think even then, I don't know if you feel this. We can kind of talk about this. I think if he would have handled those post-game press conference a little bit differently, I feel like there might have been some donors that weren't as ready to go with the move, or some guys on the board of trustees that weren't like so adamant on the move. But I think once he came in and was 0% chance I'm leaving, 0% chance I'm leaving, and the fact that he gave the fan base nothing to be excited for, he just says, oh, well, we're going to go back to work. Well, guess what? Going back to work over the past couple of years has got you a 7-6 season, a 4-8 season, and a 5-7 season. So if this is what your version of going back to work is, I think we've had enough. And I think you finally saw that from the board of trustees and the Champions Blue LLC. Is that what it is that made the final call here? I think that was the turning point personally. I think it really was that press conference and the way in which they lost and gave up to Louisville.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with like the press conference thing. I think 41-0 kind of solidifies it enough.
For me, 100%, yes.
And I mean, I think you saw that with the reports that, Kelly Craft, who's probably as good of a friend to Stoops as any donor out there, got up and left the game. I don't think that's a strong sign that, kind of regardless of what he said, it would have worked. The crazy, you said win one of those games. I think if you just are competitive, even in the Louisville game, there's a really good chance we're sitting here with the same head coach and we're diving into the game in general. I mean, I'll touch briefly on the game. It was obviously an absolute ass kicking. You were never in it. It felt like the moment they blocked that punt in the first quarter, it was game over. The whole team just quit. I told you I was watching football with a bunch of Ohio State fans, and they had Ohio State, Michigan on one TV. The smaller TV, I had Kentucky and Louisville, and at 27-0, they're like, we're turning this off and we're putting on South Carolina Clemson, and I couldn't even argue. I didn't have a leg to stand on, and I kind of want to thank them for putting me out of my misery, because otherwise I would have sat there and watched the other, quarter and a half or whatever it was when they turned it off. So, but yeah, it's, you mentioned it. Stoops, all-time winningest coach here. He did a lot of great things. And the one thing I will say about him, as bad as these last 3 years are, you can always judge a head coach based on, was the program in better shape when they left it than when they inherited it? And for Stoops, the answer, even coming off 4-8 and 5-7, is still definitively yes. This is a much better job than it was 13 years ago when he took over. And he took a program that was in the ashes, bottom barrel of the SEC, and got us to national prominence at times, with multiple 9-win seasons. And, he obviously, I think the big killer was like the NIL transfer portal era. I don't think they handled that well. Not having a true GM and pretty much putting your buddy Eddie Grant in that role, I think was a huge mistake. And you saw how many guys they kind of whiffed on and paid money to that either never played or went and bought hot dogs at halftime of games, and just a lot of issues. But I think for the first 10 years of his time here, before that era really kind of kicked off, it was clear he was kind of the perfect guy for this job. And I think he did it as well as anybody we've ever seen do it here. It just, he couldn't adapt, I think, to the new era of college sports at this level.
Yeah, and I'm in complete agreement with you there. And I genuinely think it fell off once he started looking at that Texas A&M job. Once he kind of had that, because I'm a genuine believer of, like, once you start looking outside, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job, once you start actively looking outside of what you currently have, I think that says a lot for what you think that you are working with currently. And I think, obviously none of the assistants wanted to go with him when he went to go to Texas A&M, and the boosters leaked it. We've obviously heard that story a million times. I think at that point, it's just hard to get up and go to work every day. Once you know there's not that next step, there's not that. I think he got complacent. There wasn't that thing to look forward to come into work every day to prove that, hey, listen, I should be here, I should be doing this. I think everything after that was all downhill, because then the following summer, he obviously makes those pony up comments talking to the fans about, oh, if you want a better team, you got to pay for it. That's how this works. And while he's not like completely inaccurate, there's a lot better of a way to say it than there is to just pony up to a lot of your fans who, I mean, you mentioned it. How bad are the Kroger Field optics? Like, no one enjoys going to a game at Kroger Field right now. And to get those fans who are paying their hard-earned money to tell them, like, you need more to make this team good, and then to go out in consecutive seasons after that, 4-8 and 5-7, I think the writing was on the wall. I think hindsight's 2020. I know you and I kind of differed on it at the time. Man, if only the booster just wouldn't have leaked it. And we were living in that world. Who knows who we probably would have been Gruden at that, or not Gruden. Jesus, you mentioned John earlier. John stuck in my head. We probably would have had John Sumrall, which, don't get me wrong, John Sumrall or Will Stein, I would have actually had a big debate on you of who of those two I'd rather have had. I think both of them have their pros. Obviously, Sumrall is a lot more proven and has done it at two different levels so far. I think that's where it all went wrong. I don't know if that's where you agree. At least that was the start of the downfall. And then obviously things with like Vince Marrow leaving, things like that really started to accelerate. The Liam Cohen experience, him leaving, coming back, leaving again.
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of things that was the writing on the wall for the end of the era, and I'm glad they just peeled the Band-Aid off or ripped it off and did it this year. Because imagine if we were having this conversation about they're running it back, we would have just kicked the can and done this exact same thing this time next year.
There would have been zero excitement for
Yeah.
next football season, and
I think
now
that's
it's
a
like,
lot of reason why this was done.
yeah. And I think they talk about people, and it's been hinted that Jacob Tammy was probably a big voice, to kind of make this change, because I think he understands this fan base and kind of realized where everything was at. I don't know if it's necessarily like the A&M thing, like you. I just don't know that the complacency. I do think there was like that complacency, right? Whether it was because he was looking at A&M and really wanted to go there and then it fell through, or a number of other reasons. But there was definitely some complacency. I think you saw that when he brought Eddie Gran back to essentially be the GM of this team. That's actually going to be kind of my biggest thing. I want to see who they actually hire for a GM role here with Stein, because I think you can't just have a
Kelly.
no, I'm good on that. But like, I don't think the days of like, you need someone that's kind of been a GM at like a pro level, or at least like has some type of background like that, whether it's an assistant or a director or something, because this is a business now. This is essentially an exact replica of the NFL at a smaller level. And I just think like even Louisville with like Vince Merrill, I don't think it makes sense to make a guy like Vince Merrill your GM going forward. And we stuck Eddie Grand in that role, and pretty much I think Stoops just pretty much told him, "You pick out the players, we'll get them here, and we'll figure it out." But like, you whiffed on so many, and even the good players that I think we've had this year, it was the guys that Stoops was good with, and that's getting a 3-star recruit and turning them into a high level SEC caliber player. And you're obviously getting a lot less of those in today's world, because you do have to hit the portal, and for whatever reason they just weren't good at it. And I think it all stems back to just pretty much handing the keys to Eddie Grant, or handing the keys of your roster to Eddie Grant. I think that was a big mistake, and I think essentially that was the biggest downfall of Stoops. And it maybe would have been one thing if he came out and said, like, we're going to fire Eddie Grant and we're going to look and hire an actual GM to maybe get him a roster. I still wouldn't have been excited, but like at the bare minimum, I think that's something you got to do, and that's probably on us too. Like, I don't think we talked about that a lot throughout the season. We were talking about Bush and Brad White and Stoops, and I think we really needed to look at who was making the decisions to pay Zach Calzada $1.2 million, or pay all these offensive linemen that weren't coming here and playing for years and years and years, and train them, and all these guys were paying them all this money, and you're essentially getting nothing in return from, to where you're to the point where you're hoping your 3 stars are ready to play as true freshmen.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the reason, at least speaking on like my behalf, that we didn't cover that or like didn't put more fingers pointed at Eddie Grant or whatever is because there for the longest time, I mean, it was is it Vince that's taking care of this roster?
Sure.
Is it Eddie Grant? And there was always the finger being pointed in a different direction. It was like that Spider-Man meme where there's 4 people
Yeah.
in the room, each one's pointing at the other person. So we really didn't know who to blame. We knew that there was a roster construction failure. And even think about it this year. What area of the roster did they not attack in the portal? They didn't attack the secondary at all. What was the biggest reason this team failed this year? The secondary got ravaged through with injuries, and you had nobody to replace them. You relied on true freshman guys, like you mentioned, those 3-star recruits who you could develop in a year or two, and they could be key, influential players for you, but you needed them ready now, and they weren't ready now.
Yep.
And I think that's a lot of where the roster construction failed, and that was the biggest reason why this team wasn't able to take that next step. I mean, obviously, look at the game against Tennessee, for example. Imagine if you have competent corners that you feel good that can stop a deep pass at all. Joey Aguilar looked like the Heisman Trophy winner in that game, and it's the only time he's looked like that all season. I'm right there with you. I think the administration, especially on the football side of operations, has been asleep at the wheel for far, far too long. And that comes with every aspect of putting together a game day environment. Like, that comes with media specifically. The amount of times that we have requested credentials to do anything regarding Kentucky football, and it's an immediate no. There is no questioning. There is no anything. It's oh, we don't do this unless you're a part of a major brand like CBS, Fox, ESPN. Hey, guess what? Those guys aren't covering you because you aren't putting a good product on the field. You have to allow different media. You have to allow different people to come cover the content, put it out there for people. Because when I went to the spring practice, dude, there was 30 people in attendance, and
Yep.
UK didn't make a single tweet, didn't put out a single Instagram post or anything. How are you supposed to get fans engaged into a team in the offseason in which you don't have any online presence? It makes no sense. We talk about how long it took them to sell beer at the stadium. Like, simple things like this. There's so many things that you can point at and be like, oh, there's lost revenue. There's lost engagement. There's lost new people we can get bringing into the football program. I think top down, from Mitch Barnhart to, I won't call out any of the media members because I don't want to burn any bridges. But I mean, dude, everybody's just been asleep at the wheel. And I think everyone's been content. Mitch Barnhart's been content that Stoops is there and he doesn't have to worry about being a PR problem, doesn't have to worry about him doing any of this. He knows he'll put a solid, maybe not a great product on the field. And I think that's what's got him in this trouble. That's why we're so far behind all these other SEC programs. And people have mentioned so much like how awesome Vanderbilt's atmosphere is. Not a single person in Nashville cared about Vanderbilt football 2.5 years ago. Now that place is packed out. They have a brand new stadium. The environment is amazing. They got a guy who might win the Heisman Trophy, and they're about to go to the college football playoff. In that same 2.5 years, what have we done? We've run off our fan base. We have our coach getting fired now after some people have been begging for 4 years. It just seems like every part of the process, UK athletics specifically regarding the football, is at minimum 3-4 years behind.
Yeah, I mean, it's not good. And I think back to the roster construction, like you're seeing that Stoops still didn't really have an answer with it. I mean, their answer for this year when they weren't really getting high school recruits was, we're going to go pull from JUCO. Like, in what world is that going to work? Now, don't get me wrong. Could you go grab a couple good JUCO kids and, turn them into guys that can play for you? Sure. But like, if you're building a SEC roster out of JUCO kids, like with Texas, Alabama, LSU, on your schedule for the foreseeable future, like you're not going to compete in those games. You're not going to be anywhere close. It's going to look like they're playing a different sport. And then as far as, you were talking about just everything with the fans. I mean, it was radio silence all year leading up to this year. And that was almost, it felt like Stoops was just like, we're not putting anything out there because, I don't want to create these expectations to see how good we are and this and that. But it's just like, you got to do something to get people engaged. I mean, look at the thing basketball threw together right before Big Blue Madness. They announced that like a day before. And I understand it didn't run perfectly. You were there. You talked about some of the hiccups. But what did we talk about more than the hiccups? We came on here and said, how cool of a thing was this, right? You got young kids out there on the court playing against, Mo Diabate and Cam Williams is shooting around, like just little stuff like that to get the next generation engaged. And then not only that, you gave pretty much no access to not just us, any media. There was zero, like all the way throughout. You got rid of your spring game for whatever the hell that spring practice day was that, you mentioned 30 people there. You didn't show any of it.
That event in itself, just give me like a second just to talk on that. That event itself has got to be the most embarrassing thing. Like, I see them bringing recruits to that. And me, as a Kentucky fan, you see, Jake, we're up in Northern Kentucky. You see billboards advertising Ohio State's, their spring game, and they sell that place out. I get Ohio State football and Kentucky football. We're not on that same level. But for the love of God, this is still an SEC program. And if I go in there and as a Kentucky fan, as a guy who covers the team and loves this team through and through, if I go there and I see a recruit and I'm like, there's no chance in hell I'd commit. if I was him. There's no chance. Unless this was my only SEC offer, unless this was my only Power 4 offer, that's something that they need to fix. There's just so
Yeah.
many things that they need to fix, and I'm hoping with Will Stein and new blood coming in, it's going to fix a lot of it. But I needed to go on that rant because you brought it up, and God, did I need to say something about
Yeah.
it.
I mean, and you're 100% right. And from what I remember, like the UK athletics wasn't even like tweeting out any clips of it or anything. Like
Not
at least
a
like
single one.
or something. Like I remember you sent it, and a handful of other media outlets sent it. Like there was a huge catch by Willie Rodriguez. If it wasn't for people with their cell phones recording it, you would have never saw it. And I just like it's a massive failure. And I think you mentioned it. It was from the top down. I'll go a step higher than Mitch and say it. It really starts with the president Eli Capilouto, because you pretty much just kind of let Mitch for 23 years now, make decisions in this latter part that he felt more beneficial for rather than what was most beneficial for the program. And I think they pretty much all got complacent over there. And I'll, Mitch made the right decision here to fire him. He's got to get some credit there. We don't know how Will Stein will 100% turn out. I think we all agree it was a home run hire. He didn't go and hire the Dan Mullen or whoever else, to kind of come in here and really be content with like 6-6 and 7-5. I think he went out, he took a swing. It'll probably be the last coach he ever hires here. And so I will give credit there. But yeah, I mean, this thing has gotten so off the rails for the last 3 to 4 years. You're starting to hear, some locker room issues. I know you mentioned we were talking off the air about the Jeff Badette and Vince Marrow thing. There's been a handful of other players that have not quote unquote told stories, but they've kind of come out, and it's not even guys that played with Badette, but I've seen some guys, a year or two before, or a year or two after, coming out and saying like, I 100% believe Jeff based on my experiences there. And I don't think like Stoops ever really had like locker room issues until the last couple of years, especially last season. But you could just see the whole thing was just kind of off the rails, and you had to make a change, and they finally did. And I didn't expect it. I told you yesterday, you said you think this was at like 2:00 yesterday. You're like, I think there's like a 60% chance he's gone. I'm like, I would be shocked if they made that decision, but to their credit, they did.
Yeah, and Mitch does have to get credit for that, so I'll give him credit for that. Does seem like he's getting a little bit of a bailout. Seems like Stoops is allowing him to move around with that 60-day.
And we should applaud Stoops for that.
Like I said, none of this animosity is. I think you and I don't want. Maybe I'm not speaking for you here. Maybe I am. We'll see. I don't think majority of our animosity is with Mark Stoops. I mean, the guy took us to heights that we didn't think we were going to get to. 10-win seasons. We've got guys in the NFL who are now franchise leading in Josh Allen, like leading in sacks. We have first-round picks, like all things that weren't happening at this university, putting consistent guys in the pros. Yes, the past 2 years have been abysmal. Last year, that team quit on him midway through the season. I mean, honestly, even after that South Carolina game. Honestly, I might chalk that up to a little bit of Vince. I mean, especially after the amount of stories you're seeing coming out today, specifically on Vince Marrow. And this team this year, while not a great team and very flawed, was a lot better than the team last year. And while they did quit in that Louisville game, they got back up off the mat a couple times throughout the season, because at 2-5, they could have laid down, lost to a bad Auburn and Florida team. So I'll give Stoops credit for that, because I genuinely do think this team was a lot better than last year's. But like you mentioned, it was going to happen this year or next year. And if they would have done it next year, yes, his buyout would have been $27 million as opposed to $37. But you also would have had to hire a bunch of assistant coaches. You would have had to have renegotiated with Brad White if you wanted to bring him back as DC. And then you're looking at, after all those assistant coaches' contracts, you're looking at about the same money. So pull the plug now. And I think that 41-0 loss to a hampered Louisville team was as close to like a Oakland finish in an NCAA tournament as you can get to.
It was the Joker Vandy game. I mean, the only difference
I think
was
this
is
might be worse.
you were in their house, but I mean, it was Saturday was so bad, but yeah, I do agree. It's I'm not going to say you were right. Like I don't have any animosity towards Stoops. I just think it was one of those things where it ran its course, and we've talked about all the reasons we think it didn't work. The game changing, him changing. I mean, he's had stuff in his personal life that's come up. I don't know what the exact reason was. I believe it's just the game kind of passed him by at this level. So, but there's zero animosity. I mean, the guy is giving by far the best moments of UK football of my lifetime. I'm 27 or 28, but like there's just like all the great moments I think about Kentucky football are going to be tied to Mark Stoops for now.
Mhm.
And it's beating Florida, it's beating Penn State, Louisville, Lamar fumbling, like all these great moments, him punching the ceiling against Missouri, like that's
It's
the
awesome.
stuff I'm going to remember. And I truly do think, in 2 to 5 years, like no one's going to think about really how it ended. We're going to talk about like maybe kind of lost it, but we're going to be thinking about those 10-win seasons and all the great moments we had along the way. And that's so, yeah, zero animosity for me. And that was actually part of the biggest reason I wanted him gone. And I wanted him gone maybe coming into this year was because I did think like there was a world where you still save face. The worst thing it would have been is if you brought him back next year and you have a 3-9, 4-8 type season, and then it's just miserable and hatred, pure hatred, and people are, you know, knowing Stoops too. Those press conferences probably wouldn't have gotten any better if he was getting a ton of
Yeah.
heat from the fan base. So like that was really for me one of the biggest reasons where I was like, you need to make a change because now I think it preserves those good memories and you're not having this, dare I say, John Calipari kind of level of hatred where it felt like him and the fans were absolutely going at it his last 2 years here, and you kind of avoid that.
Yeah, and I agree with you a lot on what you just said there. Like especially like I don't even know if Stoops will continue coaching. I mean, he's got all the money that he needs. He has all his other business ventures that he does. I wouldn't even be mad like at any like you kind of compared it there to Calipari. Like I actively want Arkansas to lose every single game.
Yeah,
If Stoops were to go to let's just throw out like Tulane, something of that nature, a group of
I
five
would cheer
team,
for him.
I would cheer every game for him. And I think that's where we're at. I think genuinely a lot of this fan base's resentment is the fact that it wasn't done earlier. And I genuinely don't think it's at Mark Stoops. I think it's at, you mentioned Mitch Barnhart, it's at Eli Capilouto. It's a lot of those guys because nothing had been done. You hadn't seen any, attempts to try and change something. You mentioned no GM for 3 years now. No attempts to try something else. No attempts to try and get the fan base. No attempts to do a fan day like you mentioned, like the basketball did right before the season started to get people faces to names. And it's so much easier with football. Like you have the stadium right there, your training facility right there, the players all park right there. You can either do it inside at the training facility, you can do it outside on the three practice fields out there, you can do it in Kroger Field. It's all within a confined space right there, and you can control a lot of it. From a logistical standpoint, it's so much easier to do that than what the basketball team just did. And I think this year, especially with this new blood, it's going to be so important for UK's marketing and PR team to get out in front of this, promote Will Stein, promote these recruits that you're bringing in. Yeah, sometimes it doesn't work. Jake, I know you remember when we were down there at Keeneland and we met the big dog and we were sitting there talking to him. We asked him, how's Devin Leary looking? And he said he was looking better than Will and he's looking great. And, he's expecting this team to be so good. Guess what? How excited it wasn't. None of it was true. Not a single ounce of
You,
it was true.
you know, Cam, I hate to make it even worse for you. That was after the Leary season. That was going into the 4-8 year. And we asked him how do the boys look, and he said, "We got some MFers," and I think he even said like Brock is the man. So
this is what I'm saying, but like
yes,
genuinely,
no, I
like
agree.
how excited did that get you and I?
Give me something.
Just that simple conversation with Vince, getting us excited. Hell, I started the podcast for that reason. I started the podcast because I thought that team could do something. Like this
Yep.
has grown into a 2-year thing of us covering all things Kentucky athletics because of the excitement of one football season. Imagine what you can do to like little kids and things around, around Kentucky. Like how excited you can get them if they go out and they meet Cutter Boley, they meet the new head coach, they get to see these guys play up close and personal. A lot of things like that go so far into building a fan base and to keep it going. And that's what the basketball team has been so good about. That's why you see everybody calls us a basketball school and why we have so many basketball fans but not football fans. I think they have a giant opportunity to capture this fan base this offseason. And obviously, moving on from Coach Stoops and hiring Will Stein is going to be a part of that process. And I think they've already done an A-plus job of that. The rest of it now is getting the roster set. And for the love of God, say something from the months of January to September. We got to hear something.
Well, and I think you will because you're obviously going to be doing all the new coach stuff, right? And we're going to be talking about Will Stein at his first SEC media day, and his first spring practice, and all this that'll kind of lead up to it. So like this year, I think it's almost a layup. But to your point of going forward, like you got to continue to do it. And you look at the injection of the fan base. I mean, it's there. I mean, if you just look at Twitter from Saturday at 4 o'clock to now, I mean, everybody's on board, and I can't wait. I'm ready to thank Mark Stoops for everything he did here, and at the same time, I'm super excited for the future. You mentioned there would have been a debate of Stein and Summerall, and it's funny because I think we had this debate when we were 2-5, and we were talking about how it's just not going to work, and we're going to have to make a change. And I think we both kind of said like Summerall 1A, Stein 1B, or vice versa. We would have been completely fine with either one of them. And the fact that you actually kind of went out and hired one of those dream guys, and you got him even kind of,
Luckily.
I'm not going to say luckily. All right, well, let's get into Stein because I am going to talk about something just from college football in general. I'm going to assume it's the Kurt Cinetti effect. Like, why is nobody looking at hiring coordinators anymore? Like a school like Arkansas, you rather go hire Memphis's head coach who's had mid-level success in the American Conference over going and like taking a shot on a coordinator. You know who else was hired as a head coach straight from a coordinator? Dan Lanning, and he is killing it at Oregon. And Oregon is a prominent school, and they went and got, I know he came from Georgia, but like Oregon's a consensus top 10 program in football, and they went out and hired a coordinator, and now we went out and hired one from them. Like, I don't know why a lot of these schools are not looking at coordinators. Again, I think it's just got to be the Cignetti effect. They think they can just bring their rosters and compete. But I think the way it all shaped out with all these other schools refusing to do it, I think it worked out perfectly for Kentucky.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with what you mentioned. Like the JMU coach that just got hired to UCLA, Bob Chesney. I think a lot of what they're thinking is, well, he has a foundation. He can bring that foundation with him. I think a lot of that is the reason why head coaches are getting hired. And with the portal, it obviously makes it so much easier. And with the signing day being a lot later in the calendar year, you're able to get those high school commits flipped. So I think it kind of it allows you to maybe rebuild quicker, even though the ceiling's probably not as high, but the floor is probably a little bit higher as well. Because make no mistake about this is still a gamble on Kentucky's end.
Sure.
Will Stein, he was great at UTSA. His time at Oregon, 3 years now, top 10 offense in the nation, each of those 3 years, and has now done it with 3 different quarterbacks. Now, I also want to preface this by saying Oregon's NIL and Kentucky's NIL, vastly different. You're going to have to find different ways to get athletes into the University of Kentucky because we obviously don't have that Nike money that they're just spawning over to Oregon anytime they need it. So we're going to have to work on that. But the fact to see that he's been able to do it with 3 different quarterbacks. You're now looking at Dante Moore, who's probably going to get drafted in the first round if he does declare with how bad this quarterback class is. Dylan Gabriel gets drafted the year before that, and Bo Nix, who was a career cast-off, if we're being honest, before he got to Oregon. He's done great things since he's been there. So everything shows that he can do it at the next level. And Jake, I got one phrase to say before I turn it off to you. Feed the studs.
Feed the studs, man. You're right. It is a gamble, but I mean, a school like Kentucky, I think
If it
want to
doesn't work
gamble,
out in 2
right?
years, move on.
Yep.
That's where we're at.
You can tell. You'll probably be able to know in 2 to 3 years this is going to work or it's not. But like, there also is the potential Dan Lanning type thing, or even a Mark Stoops, right? We hired him as a defensive coordinator who had never been a head coach. I like a school like us, and I know Arkansas thinks they're like superior to Kentucky's level. They're not. Breaking news, but like I I much rather take a gamble on one of the brightest young offensive minds in all of college football rather than going and get the 55-year-old guy that's been around for 20 plus years as a head coach. So I'm all in, and I'm so ready to see something new. And whether it be with Cutter Boley or if Stein brings in his own quarterback, like I'm super excited just to see this offense. And once Summerall was taken, by far my number one choice. I know we were interviewing Hartline, and I would have been perfectly fine with him as well, to be honest. But like, I know it's not going to be like a head coach kind of turnover, but I bet we get a trickle of a couple backups at Oregon that want to come and play with him. And you talk about we don't have the NIL. There's a world where if he continues to put up top 10 offenses, you're going to have receivers and running backs that just want to come here, and you'll probably be able to go grab a handful of them, enough to be competitive, of guys that will have enough money to get a handful of playmakers, and they'll go there and say, I can be 1,000-yard receiver, or I can be a 1,500 all-purpose yard back in that offense and score a bunch of touchdowns.
Exactly. I mean, sum it up, feed the studs. That's what
Feed
this
the
guy
studs,
does.
man.
He feeds the studs. And I kind of want to just talk about what you said about the retreads, like going after those guys who had the head coach experience that maybe didn't get it done at the highest level or coming back around again. Because obviously Dan Mullen was one of like the names that was linked in this. But I kind of just want to say, like, people are talking about, oh, well, that's the lower floor. With the new SEC schedule, why in the world are you chasing a floor? A program like ours, like Kentucky, like look at the schedule that we have next year. You got Youngstown State, South Alabama. Let's go ahead and give us 2 wins. Outside of that, those 2 wins, you play Louisville, Bama, Florida, LSU, Vandy, Missouri, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Texas A&M.
That's gross.
It's the floor. Why in the world would you chase a floor? The floor is what, maybe 3 wins?
Yeah.
Why in the world would you go out and chase the floor with a guy like Dan Mullen? And that's why when the list came out and they were talking about getting potential retreads, stuff like that, and I want to say Adam Luckett had a similar view to this as well. Why? With this new era in which you can get a full team and a full new roster year in, year out if you wanted to, from the coaching staff down to the final player on the roster, why in the world would you chase the floor? You see what Indiana's done with Kirk Cignetti. You see what Vanderbilt's done with Clark Lee. BYU's doing incredible things in the Big 12. Texas Tech's doing great things there too. I mean, you're seeing what programs who are not atypical powerhouses are doing by going out and doing something a little out of the ordinary. Why not hire the youngest coach in the SEC? And I think it's by 5 years with Will Stein. Why not go out there? You get him, guess what? You hit a home run. Awesome. Sign him to an extension. Just don't let Mitch Barnhart in the room when he signs that extension, and you're golden. If it doesn't work out, okay, you know that in 2 to 3 years. We mentioned the floor. The floor is that 2 wins anyways. If this is the floor, I mean, there it is. So I think this is, while I said it is a risky hire, in quotes, I don't think the risk is all that big. I think it was riskier to hire the floor guy.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think before Stoops was fired, I was kind of selling myself on Mullins, and then as I continued to think about it, it is like, yeah, I think Mullins would have had success here, and we would have been 6-6, 7-5, pretty consistently. But like in
Do
today's,
you really know? I genuinely don't think that was I don't think that was a guarantee. I really don't.
yeah, I mean, with the new schedule, it's obviously a lot tougher, but we're going to see. There's going to be shifts in the SEC. There always are, right? Like there's going to be programs that are, maybe summer all elevates Florida, but you kind of see South Carolina on the downslope. I think Missouri just extended drink. I kind of think there's a potential fall off waiting there, but regardless, like I I think Mullins probably would have had you competitive consistently year in and year out. Now, what does that mean? 10 years ago, I would have said that's the absolute best case for Kentucky. Mark Stoops winning 7 games multiple years in a row and taking you to those bowls. At the time, I agreed that was the best really Kentucky could do, with an occasional one-off year here and there where you go and get 9. The landscape in college football now, it's just simply not the case. Like there is a world where Kentucky can be relevant. Like, nobody would have ever expected this out of Vandy. And I know part of it is that they have a superstar at quarterback, but even when Diego leaves at the end of this year, or who knows, maybe in 5 years after his lawsuit, like I still think there's a world where like they're really good. The landscape has just changed so much. Georgia, Alabama's, they cannot sit there and stockpile talent as their third, fourth strings. Those guys are going places and playing. Every quarterback that is extremely talented, if they are at a school where there's one better than them, they are leaving and going somewhere else. You can go get
Look at
a
Oregon. Oregon had a real
yes,
good that transferred to Cal. It is now their starting quarterback, and I mean,
exactly.
there's a lot of links to that, and him
Yes.
potentially coming over to UK. So, I mean,
It,
that really just shows your example to a T there.
if if you can look at schools like Indiana and Vandy and they can do it, there's zero reason you can't do it here. And I understand our NIL may not be at an Oregon or Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State level, but we have the resources to be at a Vandy level. And, you know, I don't know what Vandy spent this year. I'm sure they loaded Diego up, and maybe like that might be the reason like their NIL is bigger than ours this year, but I bet it's very, very close. And I just think you get 3 or 4 studs on the offensive side of the ball that you load up with. You load up on 2 or 3, 4 on the defensive side, and you say, here's our playmakers, and then we're going to fill the roster however else we can. And I think just in today's college football, there's so much money around. There's so many. Again, what does it do for a Georgia to go out and spend an extra 10 mil when those guys aren't going to want to go sit the bench and wait? Like superstar, really talented guys know that they can go get 800 to $1 million a year and be the primary focal point of an offense rather than being the fourth option at Georgia. So I just think, again, if this was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I would have probably been a front runner for Dan Mullins, just because I think that probably would have been what I thought is the best that a school like Kentucky can do, and it's just simply not the case anymore.
And theoretically, you have the salary cap, if you want to call it, coming now, which in theory should eliminate teams from spending more than that. What is it, 20.8 million?
They're gonna find ways around it.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. That's why I said theoretically.
yes, but
In
yes,
theory, that is the principle of what's supposed to be
in
going on.
theory, written in the rules,
Yeah,
rules
right.
that are
The
not
rules.
enforced,
Yeah,
but they are there.
but we kind of mentioned NIL. They spent a lot of money on this team.
Yes, they did.
There was a lot of money spent on this team, no matter what anyone thinks. And I kind of want to take you back to about a year and a half ago in March or early April. How many boosters and donors came back once Cal left and there was that new injection of life? And there was that, oh, we can get behind this. Let's get behind this guy. And just those new boosters come out of nowhere. People that you didn't think would. People who hadn't donated for some amount of time. I think a lot of that you could see that happen. Now, granted, Will Stein does have to do his job and go convince, Joe and Kelly Craft that they still should be donating to this football program under him. And he still does have to get those donors who were very loyal to Mark Stoops to keep continuing to donate. But I think usually when you do see a coaching change like this, you start to see more NIL money put into the program, not less.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think if you kind of read a lot of like the KSR reports and other insiders, like they talk about after that 7-5 year where Stoops made the pony up comments, he pretty much went to Barnhart and said like, I need more money to do this. And by all accounts, they gave it to him, right? And then the next year you go 4-8, and he went back to Barnhart and the boosters and pretty much said, okay, you guys gave me the resources, do it again. We're coming out with a different strategy. We're going to go get the top guys from, the Mountain West and, this quarterback from Incarnate Word and all this stuff. So we just we took the wrong guys. We got it figured out. Now we know what to do. And then you come back out and it's 5-7 again. Like, I don't know if next year the NIL would have been there again. At what point do you trust that staff to go out and pick the right player? To your point, now Will Stein's coming in, and you're going to at least see, can he go out and get the right players? And if there's a quarterback that he says, I want and I can turn into my guy, like they're going to go out and do it. You saw, they went out and got Will Levis solely because of Liam Cohen. Devin Leary was brought in before Liam came in, and that was kind of the biggest issue with him is that Devin didn't fit his style. When Will Steins tells you he's got a quarterback that he wants, whether it's Cutter or if there's somebody else out there that he's going to say, this is my guy, they're going to make sure the resources are there. And I think not just quarterback, they're going to do it at all positions.
Yeah. And it's something to get excited about, man. I mean,
Absolutely.
we've been begging for excitement. Like, how excited did you and I get off of the 3-game winning streak? Like, that's some excitement we hadn't had to talk about in a while. And that was beating up 2 bottom feeder SEC teams and a FCS team.
Yeah. No,
I mean,
we
dude,
were starving for it after the last.
like, I think I texted you more in the past day and a half than we've probably ever texted in our lives. Like, I don't know. We probably should have just had a call line open and just like kept it on the entire day.
I don't think
And
we talked this much when I had, my second daughter and we were friends. I think I got one congratulations. I got 800 texts about Stoops.
it was crazy because we mentioned like waiting for the Stoops news and waiting to do all this. I haven't spent as much time on X in this life. I just downloaded X 3 months ago.
I couldn't stop.
At least 24 hours just refreshing and clicking and seeing.
My brain is rot from scrolling.
Before this, I had no idea how to track planes. Dude, I got you now.
You can work with that.
You need to know where somebody's going? I got you now. I was sitting there tracking all these and I was ready to go. And man, just this, like what we're talking about now, just like seeing the both of us like smiling, talking about this Kentucky football program and the direction in which we can go is so refreshing to see. And Will Stein, obviously, whether it works out or whether it doesn't, just taking that swing, taking that chance. And obviously, I think you and I kind of want to talk about this a little bit more, but what follows that? We've mentioned like getting a GM.
Yeah.
Obviously, not Chip Kelly. Champ Kelly is a guy who has been like rumored and floated around to be the GM potentially going forward. Is there a role for Jacob Tamme? Is there something outside of like what he's doing now currently? And then there's so many things of like, who does he bring in as OC? Is there a connection out at Oregon that he has? Does he go back to somebody that he connected with at UTSA? And there's so many different things for us to sit here and talk about to whereas this time last year, what in the world did we have to talk about?
Yeah.
Oh, they're running it back. We're bringing it back. Let's see who. Oh, Dane left. Oh, that sucks. Oh, Berrien left. That sucks.
Yeah. For me, we mentioned it. The biggest thing now, I don't really care who the OC is. I trust Steins to make that hire. Kind of the same thing with the defensive coordinator, although it's a little different because Stein's going to obviously have his fingerprints all over the offense. But for me, the big thing is who do you hire to be a true GM? And if it's Jacob Tamme, I'll be extremely excited. I mean, this is a guy with an MBA. obviously extremely smart, played football, but like you're not hiring him to do that role because he played football. That's almost just like a bonus on top, or a Champ Kelly, whoever it is. You have to hire someone that has some type of experience with business. This is a business now. This is no longer just Vince Merrill walking into somebody's home and selling them on the idea of getting this thing off the ground. I mean, those guys, their roles I think are still important, but they are far less important than they were 5-10 years ago. And you need someone business savvy to come in and be the GM. And I think if you do that, along with Will Stein and the optimism we have, and for all the reasons we do, this thing can really work. But you have to have someone at a high level being that GM, or I don't think it will. I think in today's college football, you can't just. I mean, you see it in the NFL. You can have great coaches that are handicapped by their front offices, and they get fired in 3 years because they don't win, and then they go somewhere else and have success on their second, bounce back. And I just think
Lou
this is
Anaru.
Lou. I mean, look at Todd Bowles. I mean, they couldn't get him out of New York fast enough, and then now he's in Tampa, and he's got them being a prominent playoff team every year. So I just think you gotta have a business type level guy to make those decisions, and not just treat it like we're gonna go recruit with the good old boys and get into these recruits' homes and convince their dads that you're the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah, structure. I really think that
Structure. Yep.
you need structure.
Great.
Like that's really just all you need. Top down, everybody has their role. Because like when Vince left, it's like, okay, who's doing all this? Like, is it Eddie? Is it this? No, we need to have clear, defined titles. And a lot of it is just like catching up to the rest of college football that's been doing this for 2 to 3 years. Like, go look at what Ohio State's doing. Try and mimic that to what you can. Go look at, pick your program. Whoever you think's doing the best job and is most like Kentucky, pick out that blueprint and see if you can match it. I think that's where we're at. Just find a way in which you have that structure in place. Everybody has their defined roles. And then just hit the ground running. There is no more baggage. There is no nothing. This is a clean regime. Hit the ground running. And the best thing I think I've seen so far is a lot of these guys that we see that are on this roster currently are already like retweeting or putting on their like Instagram stories that Will Stein was hired.
Yep.
You don't see that if these guys are checked out and ready to go. Like if they didn't like that hire, obviously, we had that exclusive with Matt Ponatowski yesterday talking about how he thought he would be a great hire, and obviously he was sold on him when he went out to go to Oregon. I mean, that's another big recruitment too. I mean, these are a lot of guys that you want to keep locked in. I think Will Stein's going to be a guy who, you mentioned it before we started recording, keeps a lot of the recruiting class that is already here if they want him, that is, if he wants those guys.
Yeah.
And is able to go out there and get more on top of that. And then when that transfer portal does open, whew, boy, you're talking about connections that he's had through UTSA and out at Oregon. Sign me up. I'm geared up, ready to go. I think he probably has a better way from Eugene, Oregon than to travel in my truck. But if he needs it, Jake,
We'll get it.
I'll go out there and pick him up.
I think the Crafts can get us a plane to go to go.
All right. Well, if we need the moving truck, I'll load up the truck.
You'll get the U-Haul.
Yeah, I'll get something. I'll help out here. I'll help out the Steins. We'll get them down in Lexington because, man, I'm excited. One thing to touch on though, where do you fall on allowing him to coach Oregon for the foreseeable future and call plays? Would you rather? Perfect world, obviously, you'd rather have him like in Lexington today working on the roster and getting everything figured out. Where do you land on that?
I mean, honestly, I'm fine with it. I think you heard whether it was Hartline or Stein, both of them guys wanted to finish it, right? I don't think it's a head coach kind of situation like you saw with Ole Miss and LSU because, I would imagine. Yeah, I would imagine Dan Lanning's just pretty much going to tell him you're not allowed to talk to recruits over this next 4 to however many weeks they go. And so, yeah, he may not be actively getting players to come here, but there's not the worry of him poaching players and this and that. So I just think, and maybe that's part of the reason teams aren't going out and getting coordinators right away. But I mean, you look at
especially
it.
with playoff teams. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, Florida's letting Summerall continue to coach. There's been a handful of others that have, what the USF coach is going to continue to coach, I believe, until their season wraps up. So I just think with the playoffs, it's just kind of the landscape of college football, where if you're not at a Power 5 head coach, you're probably going to finish what you kind of started, and it's just, I think no matter who you hired, you were going to kind of run into this at this point.
yeah, and you know how a lot of this can all be avoided, just having a GM.
Yeah,
Having a GM
exactly. So
doing all of this theoretically, like, yeah, you want to have these conversations with the coach and make sure it gels and matches with what he's wanting to do. But if you've listened to anything Will Stein says, it's about getting the guys in there and just feeding the studs.
yeah,
Feed the
hang
studs.
on.
Jake,
I do got to talk to you about one more thing.
let's hit me.
How do you feel about the fact that Eric Woodford is still recruiting for Kentucky?
Dude,
We got an O-line commitment before we hired Stein, and he said Coach
those guys
told
are
him to still come.
Those guys are recruiting for their jobs.
That might still be my one red flag if with Will Steins, is if that I find out that Eric Woodford is still the O-line coach in 6 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, those guys have to go business as normal. Obviously, with Stoops being gone, those guys are still going as if they're
just still out there telling everybody he's going to be back and he's going to run this
off. That's what I'm saying. Everybody's got to go like it's just
Let him
a
cook.
normal day at the office. Yeah, I miss Bush already. I already do. I already know I'm going to get the hate in the comments for it.
Louisville fans are going to miss him too.
That was just an all systems failure. I don't even know who we played that one on, but man, I'm so excited. And I think you mentioned it. A GM fixes a lot of those problems.
Yep.
It buys you some time. You let them get in here. You let them get used to. And best thing about all of it, this guy grew up a Kentucky fan. I mean, granted, don't get me wrong. I'm not one of those people, that is like I love Trent Noah because he's from Kentucky. Or same thing with Cutter Boley. I think I might be the one who's like the most hard on that kid out of anyone. Usually, honestly, if you're from Kentucky, it almost puts you at more of a disadvantage from me just because I know of how the fan base is going to react with you. But him being from the state, being a season ticket holder, knowing the challenges already that he's going to face, knowing just the landscape of Kentucky football and how it has kind of trickled down these past couple of years, I think puts us at a little bit of an advantage. And I think he's really going to know how to resonate with the fan base too.
Well, and the nice part, about him being from Kentucky and like that being a bonus, the thing with him that's different than some of these other ones and hires at other schools, it's not like he got the job because of that, right? Like he was number one. If this guy grew up in Colorado, he would have been our number one, I think. It just so happens that he has a connection here. And if anything, I think it helped us land him more than being the reason that you went out and got him. It didn't move him to the top of our list, but maybe got Kentucky up above a handful of other schools because of that connection.
Yep. And now it's a waiting game for us. Like,
that's what I'm saying. Give me to August, man. Give me to September.
What are you and I going to do? Are we actually going to have to dive more deep into these recruiting classes going on right now?
Oh gosh, I hope not. I just want to. I'm just so ready. Feed the studs, man. Like, give me to August. Let's go.
Start printing the merch. Feed the studs. It'll already sell.
I don't know which of those crap teams we open with, but I'm ready.
I'm beyond ready. Well, do you think he's going to be the Y tomorrow?
That was the rumor. I saw people saying that last night. Like last night, they were like, it's going to be announced. It'll be official Tuesday, and he'll be at the game. I mean, can you imagine Rupp Arena if he walks out tomorrow night?
That'll be crazy.
Does he grab the mic and pull a Signetti and tell you like, I'm here to beat Ohio? Like, imagine he just walks out and says like, I don't know what you guys know about me, but like I'm here to beat Georgia, LSU, and Alabama.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I'd love to beat those programs more, but could you imagine what the Louisville fans would do if he just said, "I'm here to beat UL" after being threw an L's down right
He
from the
does
start,
he does the Y right into an L's down,
Y straight down into an L's down? That would be
and then he throws Jeff Brom through a table. They or Vince.
I'd prefer it to be Vince. If I'm going to be honest with you, Vince is in some hot water with UK fans, even I think more than when he left for Louisville, which is kind
Can
of
I tell
crazy.
you? Can I tell you potentially the funniest scenario out of all this?
Let's hear.
There's a lot of rumors that if Penn State doesn't hire BYU's coach, they will go directly to Jeff Brom. He's kind of their backup. I mean, could you imagine Louisville fans if they lost Brom and then Stein's off the table and he's at Kentucky? Because that would have been the home run for them. If Brom left, it would have been right to Will Stein. And the fact that he's off the board for them and they're going to have to try to figure something else out in, who knows, 6 months when Penn State finally makes a decision on who they're going to hire.
Dude, the fact that they're still doing this is crazy.
Their AD's Twitter account got hacked today. It said, "We are blanked. I have no idea who to hire. We are."
You sent me that, man, and that was one of the funniest things I think I've seen.
Right.
But Jake, wrap it up. Give me like a minute. Give me 30 seconds of thanks to Mark Stoops or whatever you feel compelled to say about Mark. And then give me a little bit of excitement. We've obviously just given like 35 minutes of pure excitement. One pitch to BBN on Will Stein.
BBN, just be ready. Quickly, I will say, Mark Stoops, again, thank you. I was as big of a fan of yours as anybody here. It just so happened it was time, and you did us a solid with the buyout. I honestly don't even care if the details come out and we find out we're paying you more, because over time, it's a completely different ball game than having to have that in 60 days. So I appreciate you coming out and doing that for us. You will be remembered as, we'll see what Will Stein does, but for the foreseeable future, the best coach in this school's history, and not even close. And you gave us a lot of great memories. And for me, my first, 15 years of life, football sucked. I hated it. I didn't even watch the games. We went out and would lose to Western, and you made it to where on Saturdays I made sure I was watching Kentucky football, and you just energized this fan base to a level that I didn't think it could get to. And I know it just got to the point where it was time for a change. Now with Will Stein's BBN, buckle up. I know we're talking about there's a chance of a strikeout. I don't see it. I don't see it. We got Barry Bonds stepping up here in 2007, and I think this one's going into the cove, and I can't wait. I mean, maybe not next year, but 2027 SEC championship. Do I need to book the hotel in Atlanta? I'm getting there.
I'm there.
I'm getting there. If not, maybe I'll go ahead and try to pre-purchase home playoff game tickets.
I love it, and I couldn't have said anything better when it comes to Mark Stoops. Great guy on and off the field. Met him a couple times.
Great guy.
Stand-up guy. And Jake, you know this. I've retired from drinking. I don't drink anymore. That being said, Mark Stoops, you ever want to have a glass of bourbon and a stogie, you call me up. I'll be there whenever you need it. I appreciate everything you've done for the university. Obviously, might not have ended how we wanted it. Maybe could have ended with one last ride. I still think that after that 2022 season, if they would have ridden out off the sunset after that Louisville game, that would have been the perfect time. But I do thank him for everything that he's done. And man, how is it hard? It's hard not to be excited for Will Stein. You get a 36-year-old who succeeded everywhere he's been, grew up a Kentucky fan. He's ready to go. You see the excitement of Big Blue Nation. When's the last time we've seen this fan base so in unison? I don't see anyone critiquing this hire. Oregon's so upset to lose this guy.
Because everybody's 1-1, man.
Dan Lanning loves this guy, and a guy who Dan has done such a terrific job since he's been at Oregon. So if he's afraid to lose him, that obviously shows how vital he is to that program. Big Blue Nation, I think we got a good one in Will Stein, and obviously we'll figure that out coming up, because this 2026 schedule, man, It is a gauntlet. But until then, Big Blue Nation, we will have you covered. Recruiting, transfer portal, whatever we got, OC, defensive coordinator, whatever news comes out. Jake is on X like nobody's business right now. So follow us there. Follow us on Instagram, on TikTok, wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio. We're there on the whole nine. Jake, it's Stein time.
Stein
Feed
time.
the studs.
I do got to say one more thing real quick. And I kept meaning to mention it, and then we would ramble on about something else. I do want to say, you mentioned Dan Lanning. By far, my two favorite college football head coaches right now are Dan Lanning and Marcus Freeman. And when you look at Lanning's intensity and everything about him, and the fact that how well he's done in Oregon, you mentioned it, to have his stamp of approval and show that he didn't want to lose this guy, and to get a guy from Dan Lanning's tree, I think it's a home run from that perspective as well.
Couldn't agree with you more. Big Blue Nation will have you covered on everything to follow from Kentucky officially hiring Will Stein. Probably, what would you say, Jake? Maybe on Wednesday, probably when they're going to fully announce it, maybe Tuesday.
I bet it's tomorrow.
All right, so tomorrow, when the introductory press conference is, who knows? But whatever we can get out of that, we'll let Big Blue Nation know.
Bring him out
Jake,
tomorrow at the game. Let's do it.
Throw up the Y. BBN, what a time to be alive. Thanks, Mark Stoops. But it's Stein time. Let's go, Cats.
Go Cats.